Chapter 3. Yesterday was my birthday. Alexia came for the day, and Mum came to sit with us for half an hour in the early morning. It felt lovely. Something about the three of us, grandmother, daughter, and granddaughter, felt powerless and timeless. Alexia is a nurse and 5 months pregnant. In my mind, there were 5 of us at the birthday breakfast. My own grandmother, my mother's mother, watching and soothing with her presence in the spaces where the air is around us. My mother, me, my daughter, and the unborn baby. Someone said yesterday that even though Mother is 85 years old, she is still her mother's baby. My grandmother is here, I feel. She is letting this dying unfold in its own way, telling us that this is the way it happens. It is her baby who is dying now. Go with it, she is saying. It is what happens. In the weeks following Steve's death, a new man came out of the blue into my life. He was a lighthouse in the storm, standing strong while the seas crashed around him, the waves reaching up to and over the top of the lighthouse in their rage. Over time, the seas calmed and the lighthouse remained firm, its light still shining over the oceans. He was older than me. He was wise, patient, and kind. I found refuge in his company. It took time. It was a rocky path for both of us, but when we made the decision to try and deepen our friendship, I felt that he did not replace Steve. He simply joined him. To begin with, there were always 3 of us in the room. One of the first things Alan did was to lend me a tape of his father, a powerful Methodist preacher, giving a sermon about the storms at sea and the peace that comes after. I listened to it in my studio, surrounded by images of Steve dying and dead, and thought that perhaps, just perhaps, I was not alone. For my birthday, during my mother's dying, Alan is to take me away to a hotel for the night. This journey now with my mother has taken me away from him utterly, though temporarily, and we have not seen each other for a while. I am touched by his kindness in taking me away, but afraid to leave Mum. What if she needs me, only me, and I am not there? She has your brothers, Alan says, and they love her too. The last thing my grandmother asked for before she died in 1971 was a sip of my father's homemade beer. Grandma had come to our house from the hospital in Birmingham to die, and for my mother and my father to look after her for her final weeks. She lay downstairs in a bed in our piano room next to the Bechstein grand piano. The piano was on loan to us from my step-grandmother. There was no room in her house for it. The very day my much-loved step-grandmother died many years later, her daughters came to remove the piano. I don't think they liked us having it in our house. So my grandmother came to die in the piano room of our family house when I was 11, of the same cancer that her daughter, my mother, is coping with 43 years later, in her dining room here in Petworth. My grandmother drifted in and out of consciousness towards the end. My brothers and I were young, and we were not sure about what Grandma was doing in the piano room. But we knew that every time we went in to see her, she would ask for her purse, open it, and give us whatever money was in there. We crept in to see her as much as we could, to see how much we came out with. Our mother put the money back. Our grandmother had always been very kind to us. We thought that taking as much of her money as she was able to give us was what she would have wanted. When I was little, I remember my father's homemade beer smelling so bad when he was brewing the hops. The house was filled with a sickly sweet, sour and strangely hot smell. At some point, bottles and jars and tubes were set up in the kitchen, and the complicated process of bottling began. It looked like a cartoon science lab, but the beer at the end of it was supposed to be wonderful, and Grandma asked for a sip of it just before she died. My father gave her some in a teaspoon. It was her last request. Yesterday I was 55, and after our morning tea together at her little table in the conservatory, Mother was very sick all day. There was nothing for her to bring up, but she kept retching. We held her head and wiped her mouth and phoned Macmillan. Things changed a bit again yesterday, and Mother began to drift in her mind. It may be the new medicine, it may not. I went to pick up her medication in Pulborough and bought her 6 colourful flannels for her face, which don't look like they will be of much use today. A day later, her skin is still so smooth and soft and hot. Kissing her is lovely on her beautiful face. I wish I knew as much as the nurses knew. I wish I could do something about her dry mouth. Yesterday, she changed her sickness meds, and today she is not sick at all, but managed to whisper that she feels like a zombie. She is unable to wake properly, and her eyes are glazed and only half open when she tries to wake up. Mostly, she is breathing with her mouth open, sleeping with her head back and her mouth gaping and open, the air drying it up more and more. I have on hand a small oral syringe with a cut glass tumbler of water for squirts of water, and another oral syringe on a pretty china plate for squirts of pineapple juice. I have a toothbrush too to dip into the pineapple juice to wet the inside of her lips. She loved that. My friend Mandy told me to do that. Her mother died of pancreatic cancer and found that very helpful. Mandy, a soul midwife teacher and practitioner, has given me lots of helpful suggestions. I keep hearing her voice and remembering tips that she found helped with her own mother. Mother's skin is waxy and beige. Her forehead and arms are hot. She is able to dip her fingers into the tumbler of water and wet her lips and mouth. I sat on her bed a moment ago to give her a drink. She is waiting to be called, she said. You are writing lots of words. Yes, I replied. If it disturbs you, I said, raise your hand. She smiled. No, tap, tap, tap is fine. I am sitting in my mother's space in this chair, watching her, feeling her face slowly and with difficulty. Her lovely hair is cut short and is no longer the Mr. Whippy ice cream hairstyle we all used to love and joke about. It's so much better short, she said. Cut it off, she said to Tracy, who comes here to do all our hair, and Tracy cut it so that when she lies in bed, it doesn't get hot and in the way. Now Mother looks even more like her younger sister, and we are all amazed, though we shouldn't be. Mother and her sisters have morphed into each other as they have got older. Everyone knows and remarks on it, but still, Mother's haircut has made her even more into a replica of her remaining sister. So soon, there will be only the youngest of my mother's sisters left. Of their 4 brothers, 2 are left, 2 have gone. But in my mind, it is my grandma, my granddad, and my older aunt who lay down on her sofa one day and died, who are waiting for her. Mother's oldest brothers are somewhere else, having died long before my older aunt. I don't feel them here with us. Grandad died on his own one day in his Cadbury's retirement bungalow in Bourneville, Birmingham. He died 6 years after Grandma, his wife, died in our piano room at home. My now dead older aunt and older uncle, one of Mother's oldest brothers, lived near him in Birmingham and looked after him. One morning they found him dead, lying down on his bed, his cup of tea in the kitchen cold and untouched. I used to worry that my grandma had so many people with her when she died, but Grandad didn't have anyone. I now think that doesn't matter. That was his way. Maybe my grandmother was there with him, like she is with us right now. Maybe Grandad had his own people to tell him it was all right and to take his time. They would wait and be with him. He was very sad the day that my grandma died. I came home from school to find my mother in tears and all my uncles and aunts coming into the house and going into the piano room. I didn't want to go in there. It frightened me. It was November. By a fire in the sitting room, with all the lights out in the dark, but not a cold, empty dark, a warm, firelit and shadowy dark, sat Grandad, his pipe lit, the familiar, reassuring smell of tobacco heavy in the air. I went to sit with him and tried to say something kind to him. He, being a lovely man, accepted whatever it was I tried to say, and we sat together in the dark by the firelight, and I felt the weight of his sorrow. I felt his sorrow more than the loss of my grandma, who I adored. The memory of his sadness that day made me cry more than the death of my grandmother. I was 11 at the time. I wanted to think that someone had been with him at his end, like we all were with his wife. But Grandad died in his own way, surrounded by his pipes in the pipe rack, his tobacco, and cups of tea that he and Grandma had constantly on the go. Perhaps my older aunt died like he did. They both lay down one afternoon and died. Perhaps Grandad came to sit with her on that afternoon and she died on her sofa. Sitting as a child in the little chaotic house in Franklin Road in Birmingham, where my beloved grandparents lived, I did not want to eat my cornflakes one morning. "If you don't eat your cornflakes," Grandad said to me, between the puffs of the pipe he always had in his mouth, "you will never grow up to be like Cassius Clay." This was terrible. I needed to be like Cassius Clay, whoever he was. And I finished my cornflakes at once. Now I can imagine Grandad laughing at the breakfast table, how this had worked and how impossible it would be for me to look like Cassius Clay, later known as Muhammad Ali, the most famous boxer of all time and a great hero for my grandfather. My great-aunt Nina, Grandma's younger sister over from Ireland, had nodded wisely and agreed that it would be better to eat up the cornflakes and be like Cassius Clay. After that breakfast, a wasp flew in from the garden and stung me. Grandad put me on his knee, and Nina beat the wasp to a pulp with her shoe. "I was a poor, lone, lost creature," said my great-aunt, just as my grandmother used to say when we were hurt or in trouble. Mother said yesterday, on my birthday, that she dreamt she was auditioning for a play with Noel Coward. The phone rang here in her house just as she was signing the contract and woke her up. She thought that was very funny and laughed when she told Alexia and me. Another day begins. Mother had a bad night last night. We, Alexia and I, were up every 2 hours with her. This morning at dawn, she said that a man had been with her all night telling her not to worry about her gout. As if pancreatic cancer and diabetes is not enough, Mother has gout too. It gives her more pain than anything else. Today I have cancelled my plans to leave her for a night. All thoughts of life outside this house, outside this room, confuse me. I know what to do for Mum, but I have no idea what to do for anyone else, including, possibly, myself. This will all end. Today I must call an undertaker and find out who they are and what we can expect. I want to go and see them. It is important to me that after Mother dies, I wash and lay her out, and I need to tell them that. I want Alexia to help me, and I wonder if any of my brothers will want to be involved. It may be dreadful and wonderful at the same time. I am waiting to be called, Mum said earlier this morning. We will see. I am doing what is called holding the sacred space. Actually, this means I am sitting quietly with her and typing. The sacredness comes, at the moment, from trying not to interfere too much with the peace in the room by making laptop noises. Over these last few days, the whole family are constantly coming and going. It seems as if someone apart from me is always here. There are so many of us, and everyone is family, and everyone has to say goodbye. Mother has gone downhill again over the last few days, and now they are coming quite specifically to say goodbye. Each family member has their own relationship with her, and even though she is fatigued and sleepy, they have to come. I thought at first, when she came home from hospital into her bed downstairs here, that we would all continue as normal, that we would mill around and chat in the conservatory when she needed to sleep, and that it would be easy. I would set up my paints and get on with my work. I thought there would be time and that everything would be simple. Instead, the phone has not stopped ringing, cards and flowers are arriving daily, and Mother cannot cope with the energy and noise of people going about the normal way of doing things beside her. Bustle, noise, movement, talking, and especially eating, all these things that we have always done alongside her, disturb her delicate breath and ruffle the fading energy she has around her. We have kept all the friends away at Mum's request. Soon I will see them, she says, but not today. I am not well enough today. Soon, though, soon. I don't think she will see them. She has a list of people she wants to be able to see, but I think she is forgetting the outside world. She is concentrating on the inside world and on facing the illness that is taking her over. I think there is a whole tidal wave of sadness among her friends and neighbours outside this house, and she doesn't have the strength to deal with it. Alan has been in to see Mum, asking for time alone with her. Alan and Mum have not found each other easy, and there has been tension. He is much older than me and is very forthright in her views. So is my mother. Neither likes to give way. They sat together, the door closed, while I made tea in the kitchen and waited. I could hear the murmur of voices through the walls and wondered what they were saying. Both my mother and Alan were clever, insightful and articulate. Both liked to have the final word. Later, after Alan said his goodbyes and left, my mother took my hands and said, "You must marry that man." A year later, almost to the day, I did marry that man. He lay in his hospital bed, dying of his own cancer, and we held a perfect wedding in the hospital ward with colours, banners and celebrations provided by his wonderful family. He was so ill. He made the effort to leave his bed and put on a shirt with the help of his brother to sit in a wheelchair for the service. "Look at me," I said, as he began to say his vows, and his head fell to his chest and his eyes closed. "Look at me. I will not marry a man who will not look at me." He smiled and raised his head, opened his eyes and looked at me. We had 6 weeks and 1 day of a perfect marriage. This man, this lighthouse in a stormy sea, had been constant and magnificent, had been a wonderful and difficult teacher, and had asked me to marry him. I was so happy. And after the service, when everyone had left, I spent the afternoon sitting in silence in my best dress on a chair beside his hospital bed, holding his hand, my new husband's hand, as he lay with his eyes closed and his pain medication increased. 6 weeks and 1 day after this wedding, his son, his brother and I held him as he died, and this time I was present for his last 10 minutes. 6 months previously, when he was diagnosed with this cancer, he told me I was trying too hard to be his sole midwife. "When I say I'm afraid and I don't know where this illness is going, tell me I am doing well," he said. "Don't just nod and say, 'Yes, we none of us know.' I need you to lift me up, not to be professional and do the sole midwife thing." From then on, I decided I would never know more than he did. This was not my journey. He was right. I needed to stop trying so hard and just be his friend. Whatever I thought, said, and did on this journey he was taking, I would not correct him, educate him, be wiser than him, or make it about me. I began to encourage him and remind him of how well he was doing, and though it made me feel awkward, I was grateful for his honesty. And it worked. He felt much more supported. Alan was a powerful, ambitious, wonderful, shy and private man. When he first began to visit my house and covered his shyness with gruffness and a very stern face, my older brother Rafe advised me, "When he arrives, give him a job to do. That will help him feel more at home." And I did. At the beginning, as Alan arrived, I would send him to the garden or to the shops or give him the hoover. It worked, and I noticed too that if we were at parties, Alan would spend his time clearing the plates, organising the glasses, doing anything rather than having to talk too much with too many people. He was more comfortable behind the scenes. We were as different to each other as can be imagined. His attention went to detail and mine to the bigger picture. Alan looked at the ground, focusing on all the stones, the blades of grass, and the detail of the path ahead. I looked up into the sky, marvelling at the expanse and clouds, at the blue and the space. He would take me by the hand and pull my attention down to the ground and say, "Look, look at this amazing detail. Look at all the things I can see here." I would take him by the hand and ask him to look up with me into the vastness of the space above us and say, "Look, look at the birds flying so high, at the freedom and the sky around us. Look at the infinite possibilities up here." Our opposites were challenging, and despite many difficulties, I loved him for his unique, magnificent self. Alexia and I give Mother her medication, answer the phone, listen to messages, take messages, do the flowers, help her to the loo, help her back again. I can't remember the list of her medications. The names are so long and complicated. I can't read the instructions without my glasses, and I can't always find my glasses. I clean up after everyone at the end of the day, and when the family come to stay, we chat. Alexia comes to stay and is efficient, intelligent and comforting. We speak to the doctors, the nurses, the carers, and tell visitors what is happening. When Mother asks for one of her friends to come, we tell them at the door how she is and say that we will come in half an hour and suggest that they leave. Mother is so grateful to stop after that half hour, despite loving the friends who visit. Alexia does the meds. She understands them and writes me lists and explanations which I lose and can't read when I find them because I can't remember where my glasses are. When I can, I sit quietly at the end of her bed with my laptop and tap, tap, tap away, trying to articulate what is happening. I have to go up to London once a week to see my father, who is also unwell, and I go back to Bognor weekly to see how my house is running in my absence. There is no time or inclination to set up my painting things. This is a public place, and there is never a long stretch of time to do anything, and even if there was, I wouldn't do it. I have to think. I can't do painting. I have to think. Today, another day, is different again. I am sitting next to Mum on our 2 chairs and we are watching television. She feels agitated and slightly sick again, and her body language is telling me that she is not comfortable. "Do I look very different?" she asked me. I told her she looked thinner and that her skin and eyes were yellow. There are not that many differences. She is more beautiful, and her eyes sometimes look as if they are not quite focusing on who she is talking to, as if she is choosing not to, as if something else is on her mind. Sometimes her eyes are looking deeper into your mind than is comfortable, but I think she isn't seeing our secrets. She is letting us see hers. We have still not said the words dying, death, funeral, Mother and me. I went to meet our local undertakers in a house in Tillington yesterday. They come very well recommended. Everyone seems to know them. I liked them, and the chapel of rest was a sort of converted outhouse, like a couple of outside privies renovated and put together. There are no signs to say who or what they are, this family-run funeral service. At the end of a small driveway, past a large dilapidated wooden barn, there is a scruffy yard with some black cars and a good few gravestones leaning against an old garage door, which gives a clue about what business is run from here. A man in a formal black suit came out to show me through a small brick arch, up a small brick path, into the kitchen and into the local funeral director's premises. He looked like an actor from a costume drama, coming from a residential front garden through an old small brick archway in full and formal undertaker garb, to greet me as I pulled up in Mum's car, trying to see exactly where this place was. There are no signs, no adverts, and yet everyone knows them. Everyone who has needed an undertaker. Now that I will need an undertaker for Mum, I will know them too. "You can have what funeral you want," the undertaker lady said. She had to stop and take a call from the nursery about her little boy during our chat at the kitchen table, and I looked at brochures on coffins while she did so. Mum would like this informality. I said I would speak to my brothers and get back to her. I am talking about Mother's coffin, and how I want to wash and lay her out, how I want her to come back in her coffin before the funeral for everyone to say goodbye. And I haven't told her I was coming here. I haven't yet found a way to say, Mother, I have chosen your coffin. Do you approve? You will be laid out in an outhouse, but Alexia and I will make it very nice. Happy? Later on that afternoon, I sat on Mum's bed. She was drowsy and feeling out of sorts. I have seen a lovely place, she said, but the door isn't open properly. That's where I go when I am drifting in and out of sleep. It is a beautiful place, and sometimes I can see more of it because the door is open. Today I can't see it. The door is mostly closed and is in the way. But there are shapes, she said, darknesses that come up and flit about in front of the door. They are devils, she said, little demons. I asked her what she did with them. I let them go. I let them go, and they dissipate. Another day has gone by. Do you mind the days going by? I asked Mum tonight at supper. She looked at me with tired yellow eyes made larger in her thin face and said that she didn't mind. The past 2 days, Mother has wanted to get up and go to the little table in the conservatory overlooking the shimmings to eat tiny meals which I lay out in the prettiest miniature dishes I can find, with little silver spoons I found in her kitchen. She said that each day merged into the next, but that she had let go, which is why it didn't worry her. What do you feel about these merging days, Mother? I asked her. I feel, she said, that all the things that people talk about are not for me. The holidays, the house moves, the plans that everyone talks about, they are not for me. I play no part in the plans, and nothing they say applies to me. After a small silence, she said, I want it to be quick now, not slow. We just cannot tell, I thought. Her mind and spirit are so strong, but her body is not.